In focus now, Republican Congressman Brian Mast of Florida. He's on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and on the Middle East Subcommittee. The congressman is an Army combat veteran and recipient of both the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. We welcome you into the focus. Thank you. Let's start with Ukraine and Russia. And this latest move by President Biden. I want to get your thoughts on the sanctions against Russia to see if they can take some resources away from someone who's already now reinvaded.
Yeah, the issue of economics and resources really boiled down to one thing, and that's oil and gas. And you can juxtapose this to America. He cut off American oil and gas. He didn't do that in Europe, and the Russian economy is continuing to grow. That's why they have this ability to continue and fight this war in a very substantial way. I don't have a high level of confidence of what he will do with sanctions is the right kind of offense that we're looking for. Again and again, we have an administration that doesn't believe in that adage that offense is the best defense. And we could bring that back to what's going on in Cuba and the Atlantic as well. Right.
We'll get to that in a second. You heard General Jack Keane say something similar to, well, those wouldn't be the types of sanctions that would make a difference anyway. Peter Doocy just showed us the Biden team has announced that they removed most of the restrictions on the use of U.S. provided weapons against targets in Russia. Most. Actually, only 16% of possible use of their long-range weapons is in play for Ukraine. 84% of those weapons' capability is still under prohibitions. This feels like a head fake.
Yeah, when you look at this, I would say understand it in this way. Practically every Ukrainian city is leveled because Russia invaded and worked to level those cities. And the perspective that needs to be looked at on this, why on earth would we tie the hands behind the back of the Ukrainians? Why would we prevent them from being on offense of any kind of way? Why would we prevent them from bringing the fight to the battlefield inside Russia proper? That doesn't make any tactical sense whatsoever. If you want Ukraine to win, and if you're hopeful of what they're putting forward right now, this 10-year security partnership, why would you weaken them by not allowing them to be on the offensive? And again, it goes to that statement I made before. They don't see offense as the best defense, and they don't get deterrence as a result.
Well, it's also a presidential year. And I mean, if we have seen it once, we've seen it a dozen times with this current president kind of splitting the road on his foreign policy. Look, I want to get to two more things with Russia. Breaking earlier this morning, Russia finalized their indictment of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. And he'll now stand trial on espionage charges. Moscow accused Gershkovich of gathering secret information and spying for the United States. And Russia's Federal Security Service arrested him on a reporting trip back in March of 2023. He's been imprisoned in Russia ever since, and he faces up to 20 years in prison if he's convicted. The U.S. vehemently denies the charges against him and insists he's wrongfully detained. Has the current administration done everything they can do? Have they played every card they could play?
I've had a number of classified briefings on this so recently as of yesterday, and the administration is working a lot of different angles on this. But I think when you compare this to other wrongfully detained incidents, you have to say, who is it that the Russians want out of this? Why have we prioritized some other people to get released from being detained as opposed to these individuals? And what are they getting in terms of aid? What's going on in terms of the war? All of these things come into play about what you can make a deal for getting somebody out of that wrongful detainment situation. And I can only say this to you, that they are looking at all available options. And sorry, unfortunately, I can't elaborate more.
No. Classified meetings. That actually gives many people, including his family, I would imagine, a lot of hope because the conversation continues. I want to get this in real quickly because this felt really close to home. I mean, Cuba's only 90 miles away from Key West. Russia has sent warships to Cuba in the past. They've done this before. The two nations, us and them, are longstanding, or Cuba and Russia are longstanding allies. We know that. Why are they doing that now with Cuba? So close to us.
They're making a statement between Russia, Cuba, and don't leave Venezuela out of this as well. Right. There is a coalition there. timing absolutely matters. They're going to put the president on his heels as he looks to say anything about a security cooperation with Ukraine. And again, I think it shows the way that they're willing to fight. We have a president that's, for the military, focusing on Pride Month as an issue, focusing on making sure that the Palestinians get a warm meal and a new port and a bridge, instead of focusing on very specific national security objectives directly in our own backyard. And that's the difference. Russia will go into our backyard. To tie this back to Ukraine, we'll tell Ukraine, don't actually go into Russia's backyard.
All right, I want to tie these things together. You mentioned the war with Israel and Hamas loosely there because you talked about the Palestinians. I don't know if you watched it. I'm sure you knew before he said it. Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday said that $670 million have been given for the purposes of food and aid for the people in the Palestinian Gaza. And he said that he was watching another $400 million that is going to be part of that. Not all of it is U.S. money, although most of it is. How much is Hamas getting? Any idea?
So I can't put an exact number on it, but anything that goes through Gaza goes through Hamas, to include everything on that port. And let's make one specific point on this, and that is these are not ransom payments to get the American hostages held back.
No.
We're just talking about wrongfully detained. We're not giving money saying, hey, make sure we get those Americans back. That can't be the path forward.
All right, one more on that, because that's an important conversation to have, too. We have a lot of things to hit. I'm so glad you're here, Congressman. So with the hostages, Biden now reportedly wants to talk, or his administration wants to talk directly with Hamas, which would cut out Israel. Well, that would only be if we thought we could get all of the hostages back. But I'm not hearing that.
There's one reason and one reason alone that the Biden administration wants to talk directly with Palestinians, whether it be Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Fatah, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, whomever. And that's because they believe that they can work a Palestinian state outside of having a conversation with Netanyahu. They literally believe that Netanyahu is a spoiler to this. They're working with the other Arab nations on this, and they want to see Israel cut out of the conversation wherever they can. That is the stance of this administration. You
and I both know how many thousands of the IDF are fighting who are American citizens. They have dual citizenship. That is literally working against our own best effort. Wow.
Absolutely.
And I would then ask, would that lead to a widening war? I mean, if one enemy sees what you're willing to do, like Hezbollah up in Lebanon, well, what would they be thirsty to do? Right now, Hezbollah terrorists, with their largest rocket yet, have hit Israel. More than 200 rockets rained down in a barrage yesterday, Congressman. Hezbollah is saying it was in response to Israeli forces killing one of their top commanders. Your response?
Yeah, you just tied Hezbollah into it. You could also tie Yemen into it and the Red Sea. This goes all the way back to the Biden administration, or rather the Obama administration. When we were working with Yemen, they wanted to take out the Houthis. The Obama administration prevented them because they wanted to send aid there. These administrations, these Democrat administrations, are constantly holding back people that we're working with for America's best interests, and then we end up having to come back and clean up the mess later. That's what's going to happen with Lebanon, with all of those that Iran is supporting. This is going to be the path because we don't go on offense there, or we prevent our ally from going on offense.
All right, I want to put both these wars now into context. 839 days we have watched after Russia invaded Ukraine, that war go on. Don't get a lot of pressure from this president forcing one side or the other to reach a ceasefire. Tens of thousands of people have died in that conflict. All the pressure right now seems to be on Israel to end a war that Hamas started. Terrorists started on October 7th. Why?
Because they don't have the strength. You have a policy in this administration that equates strength with evil. Wherever that is, domestically or abroad, they equate strength with evil, and their supporters equate strength with evil. And you look at this and you say, even in the face of getting an Israeli hostage rescue of a number of individuals, the questions that the left was asking was, well, how many people had to be killed in order to rescue those hostages, instead of recognizing that the people that were killed because they were supporting Hamas, or they were helping them provide rockets, or a place to house those that are wrongfully detained, or they were working the tunnels, or they were working the military supply chain in some kind of way. They don't want to tie those things together. They want to see every place that America or allies are showing us strength as a place that we must have been stepping on somebody wrongfully, instead of seeing the world for what it really is, which is there's real evil, and it's not because it's tied to strength.
We're going to see a lot of the president, according to his schedule, on the world stage today, Italy G7. We'll be watching all of it. I'm glad that you were here to help us get through the early part of the day as we watch what happens and unfolds. Congressman Mast, thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.